The Southern Regional Asset Building Coalition aims to advance state, regional, and national policies that build economic security for families and communities. The coalition was born from an initiative by the Ford Foundation called Building Economic Security Over a Lifetime, which promotes programs and policies to help low-income communities. The partnership of southern states includes Alabama, Florida, Louisiana, and Mississippi.
The Southern Regional Asset Building Coalition has been a tremendous success. The first time I came to a meeting of the coalition was in Alabama. I felt the energy in the room. These are practitioners. These are people. It's easy for a university professor to have ideas and to make speeches. It's much harder for people on the ground to make things happen. What's happening in this room with the Southern Regional Asset Building Coalition is that people are engaged in the lives of real people in their community and trying to make changes, trying to influence local conditions and trying to influence public policy so that people, all people, low-income people, people of color, are able to accumulate some assets that can help to stabilize their lives and help them raise the next generation, and that's in the interest of everybody.
I think that it's a very informative conference. I've been to several conferences in my practice of law. And this is the first conference where I have actually paid attention to every panel that has been presented. So I really feel like it's a very informative conference.
This conference has huge value. We have a conference here that is talking about asset building in the community. The impact of people understanding how to create and build assets is huge. We don't come out of poverty with a week-by-week paycheck. Individuals, families must learn the value of building assets and how to put away so that you can have an asset.
The South is the place where, yes, the Southern politicians, the white power structures have been an obstacle to equality and democracy in this country. So, you know, we're thinking like this is supposed to be a better place than it is. But it is also out of the South that we've seen these movements to hold the United States accountable to its principles, and that has been a really positive thing. And that has been really at the grassroots. Ordinary people, a lot of African American farmers, and you know, just standing up. And I think that's critical, and I think if that happens again, which I kind of see some of that here at the Southern Regional Asset Building Conference, see people really working hard to figure out what are the levers of change, how are we going to make things change, how are we going to create a system that is not just like us joining something that doesn't work right.
So this conference is a wonderful conception, right? In my work, I try to make the case that I'm an economist by training. So I make the case that if we're trying to solve social problems, you can't just look at it from the myopic economic lens. That it's important to bring in other social sciences like sociology to understand about group processes and group formation, psychology to understand how people make assessments of others based on their group membership and their own psychology, things like cognitive dissonance associated with identity. It's important to fuse all those things together when approaching social problems. Well, similarly, if we're dealing with social problems, it's nice to bring practitioners and people that are engaged in dealing with work on the ground with academics who have the luxury and privilege to view these things from a more bird's eye view and think about it in a more philosophical sense. So this conference brings those two groups together so that we can talk with each other and better enables us to solve these daunting social problems.
Approximately 150 organizations were represented, as well as several state and national policy leaders. The purpose of the SRABC conference is to engage a diverse group of stakeholders to discuss challenges for economic growth in the Gulf Coast states, placing a special emphasis on defining policies and programs that support low-income families and communities.
Over 68% of consumers who buy their cars and secure the financing through the dealership are not aware that the dealership has the discretion to tinker with the interest rate of the loan, and there is absolutely no correlation to credit profiles. if the consumer is African American or Latino, the likelihood of their level of awareness is significantly less. So more people of Latino and African American descent are not aware that this discretion is granted to dealerships. So there is room for policymakers to actually act and establish some rules of the road so that consumers are not taken advantage in the marketplace. And market markups of interest rate in auto lending should be banned.
So the biggest part of it, by far, accounting for about 27% of the difference in growth of wealth among white and African American families over this period, are dynamics around home ownership. Specifically, the ways in which home equity or the value of a home grew so much more quickly for white families, particularly if they were living in relatively homogeneous white communities. And that's the huge difference.
My platform for the upcoming year of 2014-15 has to do with to stop the bleeding of the finances and economic resources going out of our community and not turning back to us. It is essential that we find a way to plug those bleeding issues in our community. We need to tighten up our financial legislation in the state of Florida to make certain that we get those entities regulated and make certain that we do not see the kind of 200 to 300% return of their investments from our community.